She criticized everything about me, my hair, my clothes, my music, saying I wasn't gay enough. Then she physically yanked me back inside when I tried to leave. After she trashed my apartment and planted listening devices, I had her arrested. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but my girlfriend just handed me a pair of scissors and told me to cut my hair to prove I actually like women. I'm sitting here at 2 in the morning, staring at my phone, trying to figure out how I ended up in this situation. Let me back up. Her name is Shannon, and we've been dating for 4 months. She's the first girl I've ever dated, which I think has been the root of basically every problem we've had since day one.
I'm bisexual.
I've known that about myself for years. I've dated men in the past, but that doesn't make my attraction to women any less real. Shannon doesn't see it that way. From the very beginning, she's made comments about how I look. Not in a sweet, flirty way. In this observational tone that always has an edge to it. The first time she stayed over at my place, I came out of the bathroom in my pajamas, just a regular tank top and shorts, and she said, "Even sleep straight." I laughed it off then. I thought maybe it was just her sense of humor, something I'd get used to. But it never stopped. Every time I got dressed, there was a comment. "That's very feminine." Those shoes are so heteronormative. You know Taylor Swift is straight people music, right? She'd say it while I was putting on my makeup, while I was picking out a dress, while I was literally just existing in my own body. My long blonde hair became this constant topic of discussion. "Long hair is so straight," she'd say, running her fingers through it. Not in an affectionate way, in a judging way. I told her early on that if my style bothered her, I probably wasn't going to change it. I like feminine clothes. I like my hair long. I like wearing makeup and dresses and listening to whatever music I want. That's just who I am. She'd nod and say she understood, but then the next day, the comments would start again. Shannon leans way more masculine in her presentation. Short hair, lots of tattoos and piercings. She binds her chest sometimes. And that's great. That's her. I never once criticized how she looked or dressed because that would be insane. But apparently, the same courtesy didn't apply to me. There was this one time about 6 weeks into dating when I liked a video on TikTok. Just a simple double tap. It was 2 feminine women who were married, showing off their wedding outfits. They were both wearing these gorgeous gowns. I thought it was sweet. Shannon saw it in my likes and completely lost it. She accused me of wanting her to look like them, of not being attracted to masculine women, of basically lying about my entire sexuality. I was so confused. I tried to explain that I just thought the video was nice, that it had nothing to do with her, but she wouldn't hear it. The really awkward moment happened during intimacy. I'm going to keep this as PG as possible, but we were in bed, and she asked if I wanted penetration. I said yes. Apparently, I said it too enthusiastically because she immediately pulled away and accused me of missing dick because I'd dated men before. I just laid there, stunned. What was I supposed to say to that? That I didn't actually want what I'd just said I wanted? That I should pretend to have different preferences to prove something to her? I started noticing a pattern. Every single thing about me that could be coded as feminine became evidence that I wasn't really bisexual, that I was just experimenting, that I'd eventually leave her and go back to men. It didn't matter what I said or did. My existence, as I naturally was, became the problem. The breaking point came 3 days ago. Our friend Emma was having her engagement dinner at this fancy Italian restaurant downtown. I'd been looking forward to it all week. I'm close with Emma. We've been friends since college. I bought a new black dress for the occasion. Nothing too special, just a simple cocktail dress, but I felt good in it. Shannon came to pick me up. The second she saw what I was wearing, her entire expression changed. "You need a change," she said flatly. I asked why. She gave me that look. The one I'd become way too familiar with. "You know why." I told her to leave me alone about it and tried to walk past her to the car. That's when she grabbed my arm and physically yanked me back inside the apartment. She held my face in her hands, not gently, and demanded that I go change. I said no. She said no one at the dinner would think we were together if I dressed like that. Mind you, these are all our mutual friends. They already know we're dating. I told her that as long as she held my hand at dinner, people would know. She eventually let go of me, but I could tell she was furious. We drove to the restaurant in complete silence. I thought maybe she'd just let it go, that we'd have a nice evening and deal with whatever this was later. I was wrong. Halfway through dinner, while I was talking to our friend David about his new job, Shannon's wine glass tipped over. The entire contents spilled directly onto my lap, soaking through my dress. She gasped and apologized immediately, saying she was so sorry, that she was just too drunk and clumsy. Everyone at the table was very understanding, handing me napkins, asking if I was okay.
Here's the thing.
Shannon can drink an entire bottle of wine and barely feel it. I've seen her do it. She wasn't drunk. Not even close. And the way the glass tipped directly toward me, at the exact angle needed to dump wine all over my dress, it felt deliberate. I looked at her face. She looked concerned, but there was something else there. Something that looked almost satisfied. She said she had spare clothes in her car. Of course she did. When we got outside, she pulled out a baggy black t-shirt and jeans from her trunk. I stared at them. "I can't wear this to a formal dinner," I said. She shrugged. "It's better than a wine-stained dress." But it wasn't an accident that she didn't have anything formal, anything that would actually work for the venue we were at. This was planned.
She wanted me out of that dress.
I told her I wanted to go home. She got immediately irritated. "Just because you can't wear that outfit?" she snapped. "Yes, Shannon. Just because you deliberately ruined my outfit, so I'd have to leave." We drove home in silence again. I was shaking. Not from anger yet. From this creeping realization that something was very, very wrong in this relationship. When we got back to my apartment, she followed me inside. I thought she was just going to grab her things and leave. Instead, she cornered me in the living room and demanded I prove I liked girls. I don't even know how to describe what that felt like. The humiliation, the anger, the complete violation of being told that my own sexuality needed to be proven through some kind of test. I ended up in tears. Not because I don't like women, but because the person I was dating, the person who was supposed to trust and respect me, was treating me like a liar. When I finally stopped crying, Shannon was standing there with a pair of scissors. Kitchen scissors. The big ones. "Cut your hair," she said. Not asking. Telling. I asked her if she was out of her mind. She said that clearly I was just pretending to like girls, that if I was really bisexual, I'd be willing to look the part. I told her to get out. She grabbed her overnight bag, called me a pretentious ass, and left. Slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. For 2 days, my phone wouldn't stop going off. Text after text. Call after call. Shannon saying she missed me, asking if she could come back to our apartment. Our apartment. We didn't live together. She stayed over sometimes, but this was my place. My name on the lease. But she kept saying our like she had some claim to it. I ignored everything. I thought if I just didn't respond, she'd get the hint and move on. I was completely wrong. I came home from work 3 days later, absolutely exhausted after a long shift. I unlocked my door, pushed it open, and froze. Shannon was sprawled on my couch, scrolling through her phone with her legs kicked up like she owned the place. "How did you get in here?" My heart was pounding. I'd changed the locks 2 months ago after losing my keys. There was no way she should have been able to enter. Shannon smiled. This sweet, innocent smile that made my blood run cold. "Your landlord remembers me." I told him I lost my key. "Mr. Peterson." My elderly landlord, who can barely remember my name most days. She'd manipulated him. She'd planned this. "You need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice firm even though I was terrified. "This is breaking and entering." Shannon laughed. Actually laughed. Breaking? The door was unlocked for me. And I'm not entering anywhere I don't belong. I backed toward the door, phone already in my hand. "Leave now or I'm calling the police." She stood up slowly. "You wouldn't do that to me. We love each other. We dated for 4 months, and you spent most of that time trying to change me." I shot back. "That's not love." That's when I noticed what was in her hand. My spare key. The one I kept hidden under the potted plant by my door for emergencies. She must have seen me use it at some point, memorized where it was. "I'm moving back in," Shannon announced, like it was already decided. "I've already brought some of my stuff. The rest is in my car." I glanced around the apartment and saw a duffel bag in the corner. My stomach dropped. Had she been here while I was at work? How long had she been inside my home without my knowledge? I kept the door open behind me, my finger hovering over the emergency call button. "Shannon, this isn't healthy. What you're doing is wrong. Please leave now." Her expression changed. The sweet facade dropped entirely. "You think you can just dump me after everything I've done for you?" That's when I noticed more changes to my apartment. Some of my framed photos were missing from the walls. My dresser looked more empty than usual. "What have you done with my stuff?" I demanded. Shannon smiled. "Just making room for mine." I stepped further into the apartment, keeping my eyes on her. My heart was racing. The living room looked different. My floral throw pillows were gone, replaced with dark minimalist ones I'd never seen before. My feminine touches, carefully chosen, erased. "You need to get out," I repeated. "This is my apartment. You have no right to be here." Shannon rolled her eyes and flopped back down on the couch. "God, you're so dramatic. This is our place now." I noticed more of her things tucked into corners. A leather jacket draped over my reading chair. Boots by the TV stand. How long had she been moving her stuff in? "I'm calling the police," I said, raising my phone. This time I wasn't bluffing. Shannon jumped up from the couch and closed the distance between us before I could react. She grabbed my wrist, squeezing until I dropped my phone. "Don't be stupid," she hissed. Her grip tightened, and I winced in pain. "What are you going to tell them? That your girlfriend is in your apartment? That we had a little fight?" I yanked my arm away. "Ich hielt vriend. And this is breaking and entering." Shannon laughed, but it was ugly. "Mr. Peterson literally let me in. I have a key."
Good luck with that.
My mind was racing. I needed to get her out, but I also needed to stay safe. Shannon was blocking my path to the door now, and I couldn't predict what she'd do next. "I'm going to stay with a friend tonight," I said, trying to sound casual. "You can leave, or I'll have them come over and help me pack." Shannon's eyes narrowed.
Who?
"David? I saw how he looked at you at the dinner." I didn't answer. I slipped past her into my bedroom to grab essentials. The room was in complete disarray. My drawers were pulled open, clothes strewn across the bed. She'd been going through everything. I grabbed my backpack and started stuffing it with whatever I could find. Shannon appeared in the doorway. "Where do you think you're going?" "Away from you," I said without looking up. "This is insane, Shannon. You can't just move into someone's apartment without permission." "I thought we were past this," she said, her voice softening in that manipulative way I was starting to recognize. I said I was sorry about the dinner. "You know, I just get jealous sometimes." I zipped up my backpack. Jealousy doesn't excuse destroying my dress or trying to force me to cut my hair. "You're overreacting," Shannon said, crossing her arms. "It was just a suggestion. Your hair would look better short anyway. More authentic." That word, authentic. It summarized everything wrong with this relationship. According to Shannon, I wasn't an authentic queer woman because I didn't fit her narrow definition of how one should look or act. "I'm leaving," I said firmly, slinging my backpack over my shoulder. "And when I come back, you need to be gone." Shannon blocked the doorway. "Where are you going to stay? With some man to prove me right?" I pushed past her, but she grabbed my arm again. "Let go of me." "You're not leaving," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "We need to talk this through." "There's nothing to talk about," I insisted, yanking my arm free. "You've been controlling and manipulative since day one, and I was too naive to see it." I made it to the front door and grabbed the handle. Shannon was right behind me. "If you leave now, don't bother coming back," she threatened. "I'll tell everyone what a fake you are. How you're just experimenting with women before you go back to men." I turned to face her one last time. "You don't get to decide my sexuality. No one does. I'm bisexual, and that's valid whether you accept it or not." I walked out and slammed the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely text my friend Jessica to ask if I could crash at her place. I didn't want to worry her with all the details yet, so I just said Shannon and I had a bad fight. She responded immediately, telling me to come over. The 20-minute drive to Jessica's apartment gave me time to think. I needed a plan to get Shannon out of my place, but I also needed to ensure my own safety. The fact that she'd manipulated my landlord into giving her access was deeply unsettling. When I arrived, Jessica took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. We sat on her couch, and I told her everything. The constant criticism of my appearance, the wine incident, the scissors, and now Shannon breaking into my apartment and acting like she lived there. "That's not normal, Riley," Jessica said, using my name for emphasis. "What she's doing is abuse." The word hit me hard. Abuse. I'd always associated that term with physical violence. But what Shannon was doing, trying to control how I dressed, who I talked to, even demanding I cut my hair, that was abuse too. "You need to call the police," Jessica insisted. I shook my head. "She'll just say Mr. Peterson let her in. And technically, some of her stuff was already at my place." "Then we need to document everything," Jessica said. "Take photos of your apartment tomorrow when she's not there. Text her saying explicitly that you want her to leave. Get everything in writing." The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus anyway, knowing Shannon might still be in my apartment. Around 10 a.m., I texted her. "I expect you to be gone from my apartment by the end of today. You do not live there. You are not welcome there." Her response came quickly. "This is ridiculous. Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," I texted back. "You have your own place. Go there." Shannon fired back a string of messages accusing me of leading her on, of being confused about my sexuality, of prioritizing my straight-passing privilege. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I screenshotted everything and saved it. Around noon, I received a text from my neighbor Dakota. We weren't close, but we'd exchanged numbers for emergencies. "Hey, is everything okay? There's someone throwing stuff around in your apartment. Sounds like breaking glass." My stomach dropped. I called Dakota immediately. She told me she'd heard shouting and crashing noises coming from my place for about 30 minutes. "She's destroying my apartment," I told Jessica, panic rising in my chest. "That's it," Jessica said, grabbing her keys. "We're going over there with backup." Jessica called her fiancé Quinn and her brother Jordan to meet us at my place. Safety in numbers was the plan. When we arrived, the apartment was eerily quiet. I tried my key in the lock, but it wouldn't turn. "She changed the locks," I said in disbelief. "That's definitely illegal," Quinn said. "She can't change the locks on an apartment she doesn't rent." I knocked loudly. No answer. After a few minutes, I called Mr. Peterson. He sounded confused when I explained the situation, insisting he thought Shannon lived with me because she'd said as much. He promised to come over with his master key. While we waited, Dakota came out of her apartment. "She left about an hour ago," she told me. "Had a bunch of bags with her. Looked really angry." Mr. Peterson arrived 15 minutes later, apologizing profusely for the misunderstanding. When he unlocked the door, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. My apartment was trashed. Pictures had been ripped off walls. My mirror was shattered. Clothes were scattered everywhere. But the worst part was what Shannon had done to my things specifically. My dresses were cut up, fabric shredded with what must have been those same scissors she'd wanted me to use on my hair. My makeup was smashed on the bathroom floor, expensive palettes destroyed. My hair products were emptied into the sink, conditioner and styling cream mixed together in a disgusting puddle. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered beside me. I walked through the wreckage in a daze. In the bedroom, I found the final insult. She'd cut up all the photos of me with male friends. David's face was scratched out of every picture we had together, deep gouges through the photo paper. "This is insane," Jordan said, picking up the remnants of a framed photo. "You need to call the police." This time, I agreed. The officer who responded took pictures and a statement. I showed him the text telling Shannon to leave and the threatening messages she'd sent in response. He said they'd try to locate her, but warned me that without physical violence, there wasn't much they could do besides document the property damage. You should file for a restraining order, the officer suggested. Given the property damage and unauthorized entry, you have grounds. After the police left, my friends helped me clean up the worst of the mess. Quinn changed the locks again, installing a deadbolt that couldn't be opened from the outside even with a key. Jordan set up a small security camera facing the door, connecting it to my phone so I could monitor any activity. That night, I stayed with Jessica again. I couldn't face sleeping in my violated space just yet. The next day, I filed for an emergency restraining order, submitting all my evidence, the texts, photos of the damage, the police report. For 3 days, there was no sign of Shannon. I started to hope maybe she'd given up and moved on. I was wrong. The day after I moved back into my apartment, the harassment began. First, it was just repeated calls from blocked numbers. Then packages started arriving. Things I'd never ordered. Food deliveries showed up at all hours of the night. Someone kept ringing my doorbell at 3 a.m. and running away before I could check the camera. At work, I received a massive bouquet of flowers. The card read, "I know you miss me as much as I miss you." No signature, but I knew who they were from. My coworkers thought it was romantic. I felt sick. Then the rumors started. Mutual friends began acting strange around me. One of them, Linda, finally told me what was happening. Shannon was telling everyone that I'd cheated on her with David, that I was just experimenting with women, that I'd kicked her out with nowhere to go. "She's really convincing," Linda admitted. "If I didn't know you better, I might have believed her." The restraining order was approved, but serving Shannon proved difficult. She'd apparently moved out of her apartment, and no one knew where she was staying. The police told me they'd keep trying, but without a current address, their options were limited. One night, about 2 weeks after the break-in, I woke to a noise at my window. The security system Jordan installed started pinging my phone. Someone was on my fire escape. I grabbed my phone and locked myself in the bathroom, calling 911. By the time the police arrived, whoever it was had disappeared. The officer found scratches around my window frame, like someone had tried to force it open. They promised to patrol the area more frequently, but reminded me there wasn't much else they could do. The following day, I called my landlord and explained the entire situation. Mr. Peterson was horrified. He immediately approved my request to install better security. I had bars put on my windows and upgraded to a system with motion sensors and cameras covering all entry points. That weekend, I was grocery shopping when I saw her. Shannon was at the end of the aisle, watching me. When our eyes met, she didn't run or look away. She smiled. I abandoned my cart and left immediately, heart pounding. In my car, I called the police non-emergency line to report the sighting. They told me they'd send someone to look for her, but by the time they arrived, she was gone. The officer reminded me that simply being in the same public place wasn't a violation of the restraining order, which hadn't been served yet anyway. They needed proof she was following me intentionally. The next day, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was, "I know what you really want." The content was a single image, a photo of me sleeping in my bed. It had been taken through my bedroom window before I installed the security bars. This was the evidence I needed. The police took it seriously this time, documenting the email and the photo as proof of stalking. They increased patrols around my apartment and promised to expedite serving the restraining order. I decided I needed to take my safety into my own hands. Jordan offered to stay with me for a while, sleeping on my couch. I accepted gratefully. Having someone else in the apartment made me feel safer, and Shannon seemed less likely to try anything if I wasn't alone. A week passed without incident. I started to relax slightly, thinking maybe the police involvement had finally scared her off. Then Jordan found something disturbing. A small device tucked behind my TV stand. It was a listening bug. "How long has this been here?" I asked, staring at the tiny device in horror. Jordan shook his head. "No way to know. Could have been planted when she broke in, or maybe before that." We searched the entire apartment and found 2 more bugs. One in my bedroom and another in the kitchen. The invasion of privacy made me feel violated all over again. She'd been listening to my private conversations, hearing everything I said in my own home. Looking back, this explained how Shannon knew my movements so well. She'd likely planted these devices during her initial break-in, when she had hours alone in my apartment before I discovered her presence. The police added this to my case file. They were now treating it as a serious stalking situation, but they still hadn't located Shannon to serve the restraining order. They suggested I stay somewhere else for a while, somewhere Shannon wouldn't know about. I took a week off work and stayed with a cousin in a nearby town. Jordan and Quinn checked on my apartment daily. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night without waking up in panic. When I returned, there was a notice on my door. Shannon had been located and served with a restraining order. She was legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. A small victory, but I still didn't feel safe. That feeling was justified when I checked my email that evening. There was a message from a different unknown address. No text, just an attachment. I hesitated before opening it, then wished I hadn't. It was a document. A lease application for the apartment directly across from mine in my building. Shannon's name was on it. I called the property management company immediately. The woman I spoke to confirmed that yes, they'd received an application from Shannon for Unit 4B, but it hadn't been approved yet. When I explained the situation and mentioned the restraining order, she assured me they'd reject the application. The next day, I received a call from Dakota. "There's a woman arguing with Mr. Peterson in the hallway," she told me. "I think it's your ex." I told Dakota to stay inside and call the police. I then called Jordan, who was only 10 minutes away. He arrived before the police and confirmed Shannon was indeed in the building, shouting at Mr. Peterson about discrimination in housing. When the police arrived, they arrested Shannon for violating the restraining order. As they let her out, she spotted me watching from my doorway. The look she gave me was chilling. Pure hatred mixed with something else. Something possessive. "This isn't over," she called out before the officers pushed her into the patrol car. I spent the next hour giving another statement to the police. They explained that Shannon would likely be released on bail soon, but this violation would strengthen my case for a permanent restraining order. True to their prediction, Shannon was out by the next morning. I knew because she immediately started calling me from new numbers. I blocked each one after the first ring, but they kept coming. The emails resumed too. Sometimes pleading, sometimes threatening. I forwarded everything to the police without reading past the first lines. Then the campaign against me escalated. Someone, and I had no doubt who, created a fake profile for me on a dating site, complete with suggestive photos that had been edited to look like me. My phone number was listed, resulting in dozens of calls and texts from strange men. Shannon also apparently told my boss I was stealing from the company. There was an uncomfortable meeting where I had to defend myself against baseless accusations. Thankfully, I'd never done anything wrong, and my work record spoke for itself. My boss eventually believed me, especially after I explained the situation with Shannon. The final straw came when I discovered Shannon had somehow gained access to my social media accounts. She hadn't posted anything yet, but I found login notifications from devices I didn't own. I immediately changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication, and locked down my privacy settings. Jordan suggested I take legal action beyond the restraining order. His friend Morgan was a lawyer who specialized in harassment cases. I made an appointment to see her the following week. In the meantime, I documented everything. Every call, every email, every incident went into a detailed log with dates and times. The police advised me to keep this record, saying it would be crucial for building a case against Shannon. The night before my appointment with the lawyer, I received one final email. Unlike the others, this one chilled me to the bone. "If I can't have you, no one will. Not David, not anyone. We belong together. You'll see." I forwarded it to the police immediately. The officer I spoke with said they'd try to locate Shannon again, but without specific threats of violence, there wasn't much they could do beyond what they were already doing. That night, I barely slept. Every noise made me jump. I checked and rechecked my locks and security system. Jordan stayed over again, sleeping on my couch with a baseball bat nearby, but even his presence didn't completely ease my fears. The next morning, as I was getting ready to meet the lawyer, my phone pinged with a security alert. Someone was at my door. I checked the camera feed and felt my blood freeze. Shannon was standing there, staring directly into the camera. She wasn't doing anything, just looking, watching, waiting. I called the police while Jordan went to the door, keeping it closed and locked. "You need to leave," he shouted through the door. "The police are on their way." Shannon didn't respond. She didn't move. She just kept staring at the camera with that same unsettling smile. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, she was gone. I decided to cancel my meeting with the lawyer and stay put. I was basically trapped in my own apartment because of this person. Jordan stayed with me while we waited for any news from the police. They promised to look for Shannon but warned me that she might have just left the area after the camera caught her. "This is getting ridiculous," I said to Jordan as we sat in my living room. "I can't live like this." We ordered food delivery since neither of us wanted to leave the apartment. After eating, I checked my phone and found 3 new emails from random addresses. I didn't even open them, just forwarded them straight to the police officer handling my case. I tried distracting myself by watching Netflix, but every little noise made me jump. Jordan suggested we invite more friends over. Safety in numbers. Jessica and Quinn came over within an hour, bringing more food and some board games. "You need to get your mind off this," Jessica said, setting up Monopoly on my coffee table. We were halfway through the game when my phone rang. Unknown number. I declined it immediately. "That's the 5th call in the last hour," Jordan pointed out. Just then, Dakota texted me. "Hey, some woman was asking neighbors about you. Said she was your sister. Dark hair, lots of tattoos." I didn't tell her anything. I showed everyone the text. She's not giving up. Quinn, who'd been pretty quiet all evening, suddenly spoke up. "I have an idea. It's a bit extreme, but hear me out." His plan was simple but scary. Use me as bait to catch Shannon violating the restraining order, but with plenty of witnesses and security. I'd post on social media about going to a specific restaurant, knowing Shannon was monitoring my accounts. We'd alert the police ahead of time, and my friends would surround me for protection. "That's insane," Jessica said immediately. "She could hurt Riley." "Not with all of us there," Quinn argued. "And the cops nearby." I thought about it. Living in fear wasn't sustainable.
I needed this to end.
"Let's do it," I decided. "But we need to plan this perfectly." The next day, I created a public Instagram story mentioning I was excited for dinner at Bellini's, a popular Italian place downtown. I tagged the location and added, "finally getting out after all this drama," for good measure. Then I called the police and explained our plan. They reluctantly agreed to have officers nearby, but warned they couldn't station someone directly at our table without cause. We arrived at the restaurant early, securing a table with good visibility of both entrances. Jordan, Quinn, Jessica, and 2 other friends positioned themselves strategically around me. I felt like the president with a security detail. An hour passed.
No sanon.
By dessert, I was starting to think she hadn't seen the post or maybe had finally given up. "Maybe this was a waste of time," I said, feeling both relieved and disappointed. That's when Jessica glanced toward the bar and tensed up. "Don't look now, but 3 o'clock at the bar." I casually turned my head, and my stomach dropped. Shannon was sitting there, nursing a drink, watching our table. She must have been there the whole time, just observing from a distance. "Call the cops," Jordan whispered, already taking out his phone. Before he could dial, Shannon stood up and walked straight toward our table. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. "Hello, Riley," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Fancy seeing you here." Quinn immediately stood up, positioning himself between us. "You need to leave now. There's a restraining order." Shannon laughed. "I'm just having dinner. It's a public place." "You're within 500 feet of Riley," Jessica said firmly. "That's a violation." Other diners were starting to stare. Shannon noticed the attention and lowered her voice. "I just want 5 minutes to talk. That's all." "The police are on their way," I said, finding my voice. "This is your last chance to leave before they arrest you again." Something changed in Shannon's eyes. A flash of panic mixed with anger. She leaned closer, ignoring Quinn's attempts to block her. You think you can just throw me away? She hissed. After everything we had? We dated for 4 months, and you spent most of that time trying to control and change me, I replied, keeping my voice steady. That's not a relationship, Shannon. That's abuse. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. I was helping you. You don't even know who you are. I know exactly who I am, I said firmly. I'm the same person I've always been. You're the one who couldn't accept that. Shannon reached for my arm, but Jordan intercepted, grabbing her wrist. Don't touch her. The restaurant manager approached, asking what the problem was. Shannon immediately switched to victim mode, claiming my friends were harassing her. But several nearby diners spoke up, saying they'd seen her approach our table and act aggressively. 2 police officers arrived just as Shannon was trying to leave. They intercepted her at the door. I watched as they spoke to her, then put her in handcuffs after checking something on their computer, probably confirming the restraining order. An officer came to take my statement while Shannon was put in the patrol car. He confirmed she'd be charged with violating the restraining order, which could mean actual jail time given the previous violation. Will this finally stop her? I asked. The officer was honest. It depends. Some people get the message after jail time, others don't. But this will create a solid legal record against her, which helps if things escalate further. I went home feeling simultaneously relieved and anxious. The plan had worked, but what would happen when Shannon was released again? The answer came sooner than expected. The next morning, I received a call from the police. Shannon had been denied bail due to the repeated violations. She would remain in custody until her hearing, which could be weeks away. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. Jordan went back to his own place, though he made me promise to call if anything happened. I spent the day cleaning my apartment, trying to reclaim my space. 3 weeks passed relatively peacefully. I started therapy to process everything that had happened. My therapist helped me recognize the signs of emotional abuse I'd missed and how to set better boundaries in the future. I also joined a support group for stalking victims, which helped me feel less alone. Then came Shannon's court date. I was required to testify about the harassment. Walking into that courtroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Shannon sat at the defendant's table, staring at me the entire time I spoke. I focused on the judge, detailing the months of controlling behavior, the break-in, the listening devices, the continued harassment after the restraining order. The judge was unsympathetic to Shannon's claims that she was just trying to help me or that she was confused about our relationship status. The evidence was overwhelming. The texts, emails, photos of my destroyed apartment, the listening devices, multiple restraining order violations. Shannon was sentenced to 6 months in jail plus 3 years probation. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order that would remain in effect for 5 years. If you contact Miss Henderson again after your release, the judge told Shannon, you will return to jail immediately. Do you understand? Shannon nodded sullenly. As they led her away, she looked back at me one last time. I couldn't read her expression. Anger, regret, obsession. But it didn't matter anymore. She couldn't hurt me now. The aftermath wasn't immediate healing. I still jumped at unexpected noises. I kept my security system and checked my locks multiple times a night. But slowly, I started reclaiming my life. I bought new clothes to replace the ones Shannon had destroyed. Dresses, skirts, blouses that made me feel like myself again. I let my long blonde hair grow even longer and dyed the ends pink, something I'd always wanted to try, but knew Shannon would have hated. 2 months after the court hearing, I met someone new at my support group. A woman named Jamie, who'd gone through a similar experience. We started as friends, meeting for coffee to talk through our shared trauma. Gradually, it evolved into something more. Unlike Shannon, Jamie never commented on my appearance except to compliment me. She listened to Taylor Swift with me without judgment, borrowed my dresses occasionally, and told me how beautiful my hair looked when I wore it down. The first time we kissed, I panicked afterward, waiting for the criticism or tests of my sexuality. Instead, Jamie just smiled and asked if I wanted to get dinner the following weekend. No pressure, no accusations, no manipulation. 8 months into my relationship with Jamie, I received notice that Shannon was being released from jail. My anxiety spiked immediately. What if she came looking for me again? Jamie helped me update my security system and suggested I alert the police about Shannon's release just as a precaution. I did, and they noted it in their system, promising to respond quickly if I called, but Shannon never showed up. I later heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to another state after her release, supposedly to start fresh. I hoped it was true. For both our sakes, a year after the nightmare with Shannon ended, I was having dinner with Jamie, Jessica, Quinn, Jordan, and other friends who'd supported me through everything. Looking around the table, I felt genuine happiness for the first time in ages. To good friends and better girlfriends, Jamie toasted, raising her glass with a smile. I clinked my glass against hers, grateful for the people who'd helped me escape a toxic relationship and find a healthy one. I didn't have to change who I was to be loved. I just had to find someone who loved me for exactly who I already was.
Alright, that's it for today. See you in the next one.